Thank you all so much for joining me again for this episode of Ascend the Matrix podcast. I'm your host, Chris King, and I am here with a very special guest who is a facilitator of mine and a very good friend and a fellow psychic healer and practitioner. Her name is Christa Rose. From a young age, Christa has been deeply drawn to assist others, experiencing early connections with spirits, angels, and guides. Life's challenges, however, including a difficult divorce, temporarily obscured this spiritual calling. However, it was through these trials that she embarked on a transformative journey of healing and rediscovery, which I have been able to witness and be a part of. She has rekindled her innate desire to help others and honed her intuitive abilities through practices such as Reiki, plant medicine, and self care and self love rituals. Over the past 5 years, she's not only achieved Usui Reiki Master certification and I am the medicine, plant medicine certifications, where she's a shamanic medicine alchemist through the program with themedicinalchemist.com, which again I got to witness and be a part of. And she's also pioneered her own type of Reiki training called Rebel Reiki that empowers clients to attain certification and cultivate their own style of energy healing, which is very Aquarian of you, and we will get to that as well. Her exploration of holistic wellness began with a deep dive into astrology and human design, leading her to the magical world of plant medicine. It was here that she met and began collaborating with me, and a partnership that has sparked many different avenues for us and lots of abundance and love and magical experiences that we will share with you all. And that has significantly influenced her practice and expanded her capabilities. Thank you so much for being here, Christa.
Thank you, Chris. I'm very honored and happy to be here.
Yeah, I have several practitioners in my program and on my websites, and I have been called to have you all on here, and we're so busy doing business and talking about clients and going through our own processes together that I just haven't gotten around to having you on here. And you have such a unique style of energy healing and such a unique story, and also a very unique way of delivering healing that has come up in your process that I've witnessed come up. And it's always been there, but it was something that definitely activated your witch wounds, and that's sensuality coaching and kink. So I want you to tell us a little bit about what you do, and then definitely about how that ended up going into the kink and BDSM and, sensuality world. And then we'll kind
Yes.
of go back and have you share how you got here. So take it away.
Awesome. Yes. You mentioned all the things, definitely sensuality coach, psychic intuitive, energetic alchemy is something that I have also cultivated and created, just really putting a new spin and twist on the energy alchemy. But sensuality has been something that has really resonated with me. It is something that I have always connected with, even from an early age.
Mhm.
And it seems to come up in almost every part of my own healing process and those who I work with. So, really, throughout that, that's where I get to utilize and manifest and utilize those creative juices that we have deep within our womb space and allowing them to flourish and come up and help guide those who are unsure of who they are, what their gifts are, and how to embody them.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the process that I use through sensuality. And BDSM just kind of has this is kind of like a mesh between the two because for me, it is a sacred ritual, it is a sacred space for
Mhm.
me. And blending the medicine with BDSM and this dynamic and this lifestyle has been such a beautiful marriage for the two of us.
Mhm.
And I love being able to do this for the community and those that are in need of it.
Yeah, I definitely want to dive deep into that. You used a lot of juicy adjectives. And when you bring up sensuality, that can mean many things. Like
Yes,
grandfather Wachuma medicine is sensual, and
yes,
sacred touch is sensual. And you can have sensual relationships with friends and with animals and nature, that sensorial experience. But when you bring up BDSM, we start to get into a territory that's a little bit more sexual as well.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I'm going to welcome all of that into the conversation because I know some people listening may be thinking, I thought we were ascending the matrix here. Why are we talking about BDSM? You know, power
Because
and
it's ascending the
control and
matrix too.
Scorpio and Pluto energy. And I think it's really important that we bring this into the conversation because there's a lot of
Absolutely.
spiritual bypassing happening in the collective. That's a term that many people are using right now, spiritual bypassing. But what that really means is that we're using spirituality and old paradigms of spirituality, like old Buddhist teachings or yogic teachings where you abstained from sex, and this whole age of Pisces priest king consciousness where
Hmm.
the higher up in the caste system or the more closer to God you were, the less focused on sex you were. And
Yeah.
there's I think that worked for that time because it was a time where they were cultivating a level of spirituality where they needed to come out of a primal nature. And I feel like right now, in this age of Aquarius we're entering, which you have Sun in Aquarius, so I know that
Yes.
this is really an important factor in your process and in your blueprint. It
Hmm.
feels like we are here to shamanically retrieve some of these sexual experiences and transmute them now. We're no longer bypassing them to reach spirit, which I
Yes.
felt was a way to embody more spirit for that time in preparation for the time that we're in now. And now that we're in this time where spirituality is running rampant, and I'm not just meaning religion, I mean just true embodiment of spirit and light codes, and the ascension process is underway. I feel like it's now time to go retrieve those suppressed, oppressed sexual and sensual energies that we once
Yes.
bypassed. And so when this came up in your process as a mentor of yours and as a fellow practitioner of yours, I was witnessing something really beautiful there because sex and sensuality and power dynamics and Scorpio energy, none of that ever scared me. As shamanic practitioners, we are really embodied in our human and in our
Hmm.
duality. So, although there
Hmm.
was a lot of dark sexual energies that showed up within other lives and in this lifetime for me that I'm
Yeah.
transmuting and have transmuted, there's also that non judgment. So, when that came up in this process, I thought, wow, that's really cool. So, I want you to take us back in time before we dive in deep into that, okay? Because I
Yes.
want to talk about your whole journey. How did you get into this? Because I know that your healing process began a long time ago. Our healing journeys began when we were born, really. But when
Yes.
you stepped into your light worker role and your healer role, I feel like there was already sensuality and sexual um, healing that you were already doing, even if it was unbeknownst to you or it wasn't
Yeah.
conscious to you on some ascension light worker starseed level. And so I
Yeah.
want you to take us back in time to your childhood. How did you get here? And how did it go from I'm on a healing journey. I've been through dark nights of the souls, and now I'm working in the realm of BDSM and kink, which, again, for many light workers listening, are going to be like, I need a bridge here. So help us bridge that. Okay.
Absolutely. No problem there. It's a very complex, process. Obviously, I've gone through a lot of really shamanic initiations through my process of entering into this space. I had to go from childhood, um, being sexually abused as a small child. Also, in the midst of being sexually abused, there were circumstances where it was confusing because there was, parts of me that was like, what's going on here? Am I really enjoying this at this age?
Right.
Like,
Oh,
are these things that are coming
yeah.
up and in my process, like
Well,
something that ignited? Yeah,
I'm
go
so
ahead.
sorry to interrupt. You know us manifestors. We've got our throat center. Once it starts, it's hard to stop it. And I
Go
really
for
need to
it.
jump in here because this is not a topic we normally discuss. We talk about satanic ritual abuse, child abuse, I'm like, ooh, be careful what words we use,
I
okay? You
know,
know,
I
in this
know.
false matrix we're in. So, the sitting in traffic type of things
Yeah,
that are going on, right? So there are many facets to this, but we don't necessarily have this conversation, okay? And
no,
this is a conversation that many of my clients have had with me in sessions. I often find that old souls, light workers, star seeds have a very strong, innate sexual energy from a very young age. I did. It was almost like
Yeah.
I lived so many lifetimes so far where I did grow up and eventually have sex that when I came into this body, not only was I mad that I couldn't speak, okay, I remember having
Yeah.
memories as a baby where I couldn't speak, but there were also times in childhood, very, very young, where I had sexual fantasies, even if like my brain didn't know what all the puzzle pieces weren't quite there. The
Yeah.
desire and the pure creative energy was there. So take us back into that time. You don't have to go into any detail that you don't want to, but I want you to let's have a little bit more discussion about what was happening back then because, I've also dealt with sexual abuse and sexual energies like that. And I often find that a lot of these people, even when they step into their light worker role on their healing journey, they don't go down that hallway. They
Mhm.
they remain in the assumption that sex is for adults or it's for whatever adults is now that that age has changed over the past 13,000 years that we've had this false matrix in place, but there's this shunning of that sexual energy, or that's the one piece of their healing journey they won't venture into.
Yeah.
I've met many light workers who get angry when you bring up sex or when you bring up it's like they go totally into I want to protect the children, I want to save the children and help them out of the tunnels and all of that sort of thing, but they won't face it within themselves and they won't reclaim it the way that you have because the way
Yeah.
that you have feels dangerous to many
Yes.
people. Okay? So let's go back there and talk about that a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. And the danger part is so prevalent and so real because along with these odd feelings and things that were coming up for me at a very young age of just like finding pleasure and wanting to explore that and exploring it with others, um, I felt so much shame and
Yeah.
so much guilt because,
Yeah,
you know,
so did
growing
I.
up in a, yeah, and growing up in a very, you know, traditional, you know, spiritual, well, religious family, you know, that's, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to have these thoughts. You're not allowed to have these, you know, actions and things like that. You know, I remember when I was really young, even like preschool, even age, going to a daycare and playing doctor with somebody.
Totally.
And I mean,
Yep.
doctor, we touched each other,
Yep.
we explored. And, you know, I was told that was abuse, that I wasn't supposed to do that, that
Yeah.
either I was abusing or he was abusing. It's like I was so
Oh, you were
confused. I
told that.
didn't understand. Yes,
Oh,
I
wow.
wasn't understanding what was going on.
Yeah.
And it was very confusing time for me. Um, but through that, you know, it I built upon it. Yes. And I was sexually abused and
Yeah.
sexually assaulted
Yes.
after that as well. And where it was wrong. And it wasn't in my ability and my power and I didn't want it. I didn't like it. I didn't feel
Right.
good to me
Right.
at
There
times.
is a
And
difference.
so there is such a difference in
This is a
that. And so
dangerous
one
conversation, Krista.
it
I'm
is a
letting you
very dangerous
know.
conversation. It's
It's only,
going to
yeah,
provoke a lot of people.
it is, and it's dangerous because it's triggering, but also this is just not a topic many people of any sort have, and it's something that has played a role in my journey a lot is going back into childhood and even remembering feeling shame about certain sexual energies or having sexual or what I what was sexual at the time
Mhm.
experiences with other kids in the neighborhood or with the girl I was with across the street at 5 years old and
Yeah,
it wasn't like there was any force, it was like we both wanted it, there was big experimentation, and I was never
exactly.
told that that was wrong up to a certain point, but yet I still felt shame. It was almost like the shame was ingrained in my DNA and passed down through
Yeah.
religion and through generations and generations of sexual oppression and belief systems that got activated
Yes.
that were just unconscious. So I find that a lot of us attract a lot of darker or
Hmm.
abusive sexual experiences. And I hate to say attract because I do not want people
Yeah.
to think that I am saying that,
Yeah.
your inner child and your child self attracted that or deserved it in any way. But I just mean we do bring these things to us through the genetics that we come in with. We do
Hmm.
our expression of reality or our experience of reality is colored by these things. And I feel like once that shame is activated, it almost calls more shameful experiences to it, which is
Yeah.
sad and unfortunate in this
Yeah.
matrix. But then for us light workers and star seeds, we transmute it later, which is why,
Exactly.
whether it was a
Yeah.
choice from the beginning or not, which I believe it was for me especially.
Yeah.
But do you feel like there was shame even before you were told that that was
Yes.
abusive? Yeah, that's so weird to me. Where do we get that from?
Absolutely.
Where did we
I
get that
I
from as
do.
children? If it was never talked
It's
about,
crazy.
then how did we even know it was wrong in the beginning stages when we were first doing it?
I think it's just something that we innately know within ourselves. Because, again, like you said, I think it was a passed down ancestral knowing
Yeah,
that has happened to many lives within us. It could have happened in another lifetime for us. So we already had that knowing coming into this life. We may have had experiences where we have been, and we'll talk about it as we go, where I have had um, many lives where this was something that was constantly trying to be siphoned and taken from me. Um, but as we were saying, just as I kind of grew older and really started to understand my own body, understand my own desires, I even started wanting things at a very young age. And this was scary to me because I'm like, did my past, create this need for that? Like from having the sexual abuse and the experimentation, there was a lot of shame and doubt around that, even when I was going into more of an
especially being a
actual
female.
conscious. Exactly.
Like there's
You
even
know,
more of a program running within the feminine consciousness around
exactly.
sexuality and purity and all that kind of stuff. Like sexuality
Exactly.
makes you impure in some way.
Exactly. And that's constantly how I felt growing up, even into my teens and 20s and 30s. I was constantly feeling like I was the slut. I was the impure one. I was the sexually active
Witch,
person that, exactly,
witch, witch
exactly.
wounds. Yeah.
So many witch wounds. I was constantly being, she's easy. She's taking fun. Of course, she got the red hair to go with it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
lots of comments there
Not only
and
does she not have a
assumptions.
soul, but she's a slut. I know. It's horrible.
It's
Where do
horrible.
these humans come up with this stuff?
I wish I knew.
It's just
I wish I
old
knew.
folklore that just makes its way into, it just keeps being passed down. And we as light workers come in to dismantle that. So we
Yeah,
do come in, we don't incarnate in the family that has no trauma. We incarnate in the ones that have the most so we can stop the genetic train. And that is not fun, but
exactly.
it's like,
No.
and we come into the lives where that's playing in the family that also connects to our other lives, as you've mentioned. So it becomes this really entangled web of certain themes that show up for ourselves in our lives.
Yeah.
The soul does not judge the things that our ego does and society does. So for many light workers and star seeds, I find, or mystics, just people on the healing journey, their process brings things up for them that are shocking, taboo. They don't want to go there. It's so triggering. They shame themselves. I've went through that. I almost killed myself over certain energies
Mhm.
that came up for me in my sacral and in my sexual experience from past lives and from things that I'm choosing to dismantle in this lifetime. And there are just people who aren't talking about it. Not
No.
you even have the shadow workers. They're talking about negative entities and reptilians, but they're not talking about this. It's such a really fragile
It
discussion.
is.
So I just want to say I see you for being brave on a
Thank
soul
you.
level, but also a human,
Thank you.
for the soul is so brave. The soul has no fear. So it came in
Yes.
knowing, but your human had to
Yes.
catch up with that.
It did. It 100% did. And that has been a very challenging process because along the way, there was lots of process, being, shamed and
Persecuted.
persecuted, yes, so
Or
many times.
prosecuted. Hey.
Prosecuted, persecuted, whatever. But, yeah, kind of was in that
It's so
state too,
interesting, us witches who've been witchy or shamanic energies in many lifetimes, we have this experience play out in a new way in
Mhm.
these lifetimes with the
Yes.
same people too. It's like
Absolutely.
maybe my partner who persecuted me, or the my mother who persecuted me, maybe they were the bishop in the village that dragged us out of the woods and hung us in the town square. And I'm using that as a
Yes.
very stereotypical reference. It
Yes.
comes in many
Yes.
ways, but
Yes.
it's interesting how that shows up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's been a roller coaster. There's no doubt. I finally got to a point where I just started to embody this part of me. I started to just really let it be who I am, because really, truly, when I'm in, I don't know how else to say this, but when I'm in that zone, I'm in that space of really that switch of becoming that sexual, powerful individual. There's just something that like turns on within me, and it really allows me to have this beautiful power within myself.
Oh,
And it's like I'm not in my head anymore, and I am so in my body,
mm,
so
yeah,
deeply that it just doesn't matter what's around me. I don't think about what I look like, what I feel like. It's just, I know how amazing I am in that moment. And I just stay so present in
yeah.
it. And that right there is the thing that I just truly learned to harness and
Mm,
take that forward for me. And that's what helped me survive many things that came after that.
yeah. So
So that's been the biggest part of it.
there's, um, I'm seeing right now, the book, um, Alchemy of Nine Dimensions by Barbara
Yeah.
Handclough.
Yeah.
And there's an interview with her where she channels the Pleiadians, and the Pleiadians, these types of Pleiadians she works with are fifth dimensional. They keep the fifth dimension. They are playful, and they protect children. They're very sexual. They're very sensual. They love love making. They love the connection of love and the heart-centered consciousness. And she says that they told her that the human orgasm is so powerful that it actually moves the galactic center, which means it affects the frequency or the wobble
Wow.
or the vibration of the
Wow.
galactic center itself. Every single orgasm we have, and
Whew.
the French call
We need
the
to have
orgasm
more.
"les petites mortes," which means the little
Ooh.
death. So it's like
Ooh.
there's this, even Abraham Hicks talks about when you have orgasm, when you reach climax, you are 100% in alignment with source, even if it's for a split second, because there's many times,
I believe it.
even during the orgasmic state, I have experienced shame.
Yeah.
So, but for a moment at least, there's this complete merging with the higher self that doesn't
Mm.
sound like opposite of spirit. That doesn't sound like we need to bypass that. And especially for
Agreed.
feminine energies, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to have Jen Fields on here for a part two here in the next couple of weeks. And she works a lot with sexual energies. And she talks about, feminine and female energies.
Mm-hmm.
The orgasm is used to manifest and used to
Yes.
cultivate life force energy. So
Absolutely.
none of that sounds opposite from spirit.
No.
It sounds
No.
like it's a missing key.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to say this for people listening because there's a lot coming through, and you are a projector, and that's what happens when I get with projector energies. You all can just sit there and my throat just opens. I'm like, the adjectives and the way we're describing things is so hilarious on here. I'm like,
It's so
that's what
juicy.
she said. Okay. So, so
I didn't go there.
yeah, I'm going to go there.
I thought
So
it.
I feel like, and I appreciate you opening all of these channels for me
Yes.
because it's bringing a lot of
Absolutely.
that through. But my question to you is now, how did the sexual energies that you experienced in the transmuting of that and the reclaiming of that, Gemini brain. What I was going to say about Jen Fields. I'm sorry, you all. I have in the false matrix chart or tropical chart, I have lots of Gemini, so it goes all over the
Very
place.
familiar.
So again talks about that cultivating of the sexual energy, and again, there's a priestess energy that comes on
Mhm.
with that, and that was the point I was trying to get to. And so there's a power that is restored through that, and I feel like through the false matrix implementation and through the control mechanisms, we've got a lot of light workers returning back to religion. They're seeing the dark energies, they're seeing demonic faces in their medicine journeys, and they're running right back to the church. And the religious programming and the REPTILIAN program wants that to happen. They created that whole thing. It's like they created the New Age religion and they created the Judeo-Christian religions, and the religions that are based on Saturn. And so it's a ping pong match. And so I feel
Yeah.
that they have really used our sexual energy, our most creative energy that they're siphoning the most, to
Yes.
create this ping pong match. And both of them like put sexual abstinence and the suppression of sexuality on a pedestal in some way. And that is
Mhm.
by design. So,
Yes.
what my question is, see, the Gemini brain, I work like a tree. We're going to go back to the main branch here. How did this coalesce with healing work, spirituality? I mean, it is the same thing to me, but for your human, when did that come into the picture?
That came after a very nasty divorce.
Oh, yeah,
That
let's go
was
there.
about a lot of what I had happen to me, you know. So once my ex and I finally separated and divorced, I the BDSM actually came on. I was in a very low state. I was at a very low pivotal part of my life. It was that deep dive into the dark night of the soul was beginning. I had
Yeah.
very low
What year
self-worth.
was this?
This was 2016.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh,
2016
yeah.
was when this began. And it actually kind of started leading up a little bit before that. Obviously, 2012 was a big pivotal
Ugh,
year.
that
I
was
was
that was what
really,
I was looking for. Every person I
yeah,
have on this
yeah.
podcast, I'm like, let me see if I can get them to say 2012, because that was
It
obviously a
really,
huge pivot
really
point for us.
shifted there. It really started shifting. That's where this was before the divorce. I really started noticing that I was extremely unhappy. My desires weren't being met. I really wanted more. I wanted to explore more in my life. And it just felt very mundane at that time.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
where the spiritual
Like no
awakening
magic.
really happened. No, none.
And what
And
I'm getting right now, real quick, Krista, is that we're in
yeah,
a 9 year right now. Okay. It's the year of the snake. Love that. But it's a 9 year. And if we
hmm,
go back to 2016, that was a 9 year. So I feel
exactly.
like what you initiated or completed in 2016 is now coming to another edge of that spiral.
Yeah,
And for me as well, it is like the things I'm talking about with you on this podcast. A lot of it was really starting and really coming into being heavy and shameful for me
yeah,
in 2016. This is about a year before my Kundalini awakening. And
yeah.
I mean, now I'm on here on a podcast talking about it, where like the things that we used to fear that we were going to be
Yes,
hung or burned for,
yes,
we're just on here talking about it. So I also want to
exactly.
bring up the cycles and seasons for those listening
Thank
as
you.
well, is that pay attention to that, what's completing for you in this 9 year, and look back at 2016, because I can see how, 9 years feels like a long time, but it's just the natural progression of that spiral. And
Yeah,
so in 2016, things feel, we're in Muggleville. We feel like Harry Potter, sleeping under the stairs. We haven't
yes,
gotten our Hogwarts letter yet.
yes.
Where do we go from here?
Well, what I ended up doing was jumping into a dynamic with somebody who was very toxic, extremely toxic.
Out of your
Um,
divorce,
After my divorce, yes,
which,
I
yeah,
got
that's normal.
exactly. And they introduced me to the BDSM world.
Mm.
They're like, have you ever heard of this? And I had already been playing around with stuff like that, but I hadn't really learned what. And just for those that don't know, I will go ahead and go over what BDSM is. It's, bondage, dominant, submissive, and masochist. And so what we arranged, this person and I, was that we were going to do sort of a dominant submissive role.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, they were very heavy toxic and they were not what I truly consider a true dominant person.
It was the
They
dark
wanted
side of Scorpio energy. It was
the,
control rather than
uh-huh,
controlled environment. It was control
yes,
over the environment and control over the
exactly.
people. Yeah.
Very Capricorn energy, this person was. I'm just going to put it out there. But either way, they very much took advantage of me at a very low point in my life.
Yeah.
And I want
Yeah.
to say this for those that ever consider going into these lifestyles. You really, as a submissive, have to truly be in a good headspace. And you really have
Yeah.
to be strong to submit. It's not an easy thing to do, to
Yeah.
let go of control and trust somebody. And I didn't know those things at the time.
Right.
And I just jumped full in, feet first, not having a freaking clue what I was doing. And I learned a lot of hard lessons through that. And once that kind of played itself out, they were a type of person that just wanted to tear me down and not build me up.
Right.
Those are red flags right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Didn't believe in what we call in this lifestyle safe words. Red flag number two.
Mm.
Yeah, you got to have those things. Those are for your safety.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of things that I just wasn't familiar with, and they took advantage of that. And once that, I finally got the courage and the understanding that, thankfully through communicating with other people in this lifestyle who are like, hey, this doesn't seem like, a good fit. This doesn't seem like these are things that you should be experiencing. I got a lot of wonderful mentors that came into my life with this. And going forward, I got into a better relationship, but that ended. And that's when I was like, let's work on myself.
Hmm.
What can I do to bridge these gaps, to really be the submissive that I want to be? I need to heal who I am first.
Yeah.
And that's when Reiki came into my life.
Hmm.
That's when energy work came into my life. That's where I started that self recognition of I can heal myself. I can go through these processes. I went through other mentors that taught me more about this, more about psychic abilities, really utilizing these things. So
Yeah.
through my own pain and suffering and my own depression, I managed to work through my own healing journey. And then once that kind of came through, that's when I was able to take it a step further and become the healer as well for others.
Yeah. What I'm seeing right now is, would you say, because in 2012 I was in a karmic relationship with someone who is Scorpio sun, okay, and really was an embodiment of, it was as twin flame as you can get, but it wasn't. It wasn't a twin flame. It was karmic because there was this like mirrored nature, but it
Mm-hmm.
was like he was the shadow embodiment of my inner shadow that had not come to light and had not been able to be seen by me yet. I'm only 20 years old at the time as well. It's not like
Yeah.
I've gone through my initiations yet. But would you say that this toxic dominant person, who with a lot of this Capricorn energy, which I find interesting with Pluto being in Capricorn at the time,
Mm-hmm.
that he was an embodiment of your shadow or your shadow persecutors in other lifetimes, even?
Absolutely. I believe the second one really resonates
Yeah.
a lot with the persecutors. Absolutely. It really helped me. see myself. It
Yeah.
mirrored
Yes.
back a lot of what I needed to see to help me kind of claw my way out
Mm.
of the hole.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah. So take us into, once you are opening psychically and you're stepping into your role as a practitioner and a healer and you're getting into the healing arts. Take us into, how you got to where you are now, where BDSM and kink are coalescing with energy healing and how all of that came into a beautiful harmonic experience, which it may not have been at one time, but take us to from there when you started opening up to that to now.
Yeah, absolutely. So once I really stepped into learning how energy work, really starts, I started doing the Reiki. I got certified, with all three levels, including becoming a master Reiki practitioner. Then I wanted to start going out and doing more of the healing work. So then I decided personally to get on and learn more about BDSM because, once, unfortunately, once I'm going to take a little step back here for a moment,
Please do.
went through the divorce, then I kind of had to go back into something even more, another initiation, shamanic initiation. My ex took me back to court because of he thought I was had a sexual addiction, is what he pretty much proclaimed that as because he found me on Tumblr and pictures were posted because I was in a place where I was empowered by my own body and I wanted to display it in a way that really showed that I'm finally stepping back into who I am.
Yeah.
I'm owning who I am. I'm owning my
Yes.
own sexuality. And again, the shame came back at me.
Yes.
The witch hunt came back at me. And so I really recognized in those moments this was something that apparently I had power in, that I had a gift in, and I needed to harness it even more. So after that whole situation with my ex kind of happened and we moved through that and we got past that, I finally kind of had to take a break from everything and I got back on Tumblr. And that's when I met my beautiful and wonderful husband because I was
Wow.
reclaiming who I was again. I was reclaiming these gifts. I was no longer ashamed of who I was. I was owning it and owning it proudly because I was no longer going to be witch hunt anymore. I was going to stand in this power and claim it as mine, and no one was going to take it away.
Yeah.
So I decided I'm going to get back on. I'm going to see how I can bridge these two gaps, how I can learn more. I wasn't planning on meeting anybody at the time, and it just happened to go through that. And the more he and I kind of progressed in our relationship, and the more we decided to take on these roles, him as my dominant and me as his
So he was
submissive.
already into this. He was already when I
No,
oh,
no,
oh,
I brought him into this world. He
oh.
was actually, he was very against it when we first started
So
talking.
interesting how much misunderstanding. I mean, I had it back in the day, as sexual as I am, or as in my power around it as I am now, and as sexual as I have been in this lifetime, and as kinky as I have experimented with, and all that kind of stuff. I still would have looked at somebody who was a healer or was putting themselves out there, you know, with leather and whips and chains and that sort of stuff as someone who was disturbed, even, because
Yes,
let's face it,
yes,
you know, I I am not straight. So I encounter apps or have encountered apps such as Grinder, okay? Which is as false matrix as you can get.
yeah,
And so even in the gay world, when when there's dominance and submission, it's very toxic. It's
Yes.
no respect, no boundaries,
Yes.
very abusive verbally, physically, all of it. And I sort of had to participate in that back in the day because that was the only way to, people weren't turned on by, asking for permission, or it's like it's very toxic, and there are a
Yes.
lot. It's a fine line because
Hmm.
there's almost something satanic or saturnic about the BDSM world. There's restriction and dominance and power. It's plutonic. It's, you know, um, ritualistic. So things can get conflated in people's minds. And what I want everyone to understand, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, is that the satanic or saturnic agenda, and for those listening, do not check out. I'm not religious. I'm not a born again Christian. And I just don't want people to think, oh my God, we're we're going here now, like we're talking about Satanism. We're talking about lizard-like things happening. Okay, we're not talking about the church and the devil. I'm talking about
Yeah.
Saturn, right? And the
Yes.
control frequencies. Well, the number 13 is so sacred. They love that number. And so gold is so sacred. The Illumin T likes that. Okay, they love gold. When that's an amazing frequency and a
Yes.
densified version of sunlight, they like to stand at the door of where the ascension process could occur. They like to guard that door and claim it as their own. So they've also taken over the idea of ritual and turned sexuality or power plays into abuse. So I feel like people like you are taking something that could be and is being used
Yes.
as
Yes.
a very dense, not heart driven, not soul informed experience, which I have
Hmm.
witnessed and watched, and the internet is full of that. Okay.
Hmm.
I mean, I know people who are in BDSM communities where they play with consensual non-consent, and they play with age play and,
Hmm.
almost acting out certain things that have happened in their lives. And they do it in a very beautiful way that's in a
Yes.
controlled environment. There are healing modalities where you get tied up and you're hanging on these ropes, and there's this whole like emotional release that happens.
Yes.
So there's this fine line, and it's just like plant medicine. You can take
Yes.
mushrooms and go to a concert and trip balls, dude, or you can work with them in ceremony and have one of the most magical experiences of your life that activates your
Yes.
DNA.
Yes.
So it is about intention. So I want people to
Yes.
understand that many of you all out there, you all are going to the yoga class, you're doing the meditations, you're going to the retreats, and you're trying to pray. I almost said pray away the gay. You're trying to pray away or meditate away all those fantasies that you have when you go into your bedroom or wherever you all are doing it. Okay. And I have had that experience where I thought, these fantasies do not go with this shamanic person that I am, that this spiritual teacher that I am, this new earth leader that I am. If only people knew how dark or twisted or evil even. And I'm over all of that, but my ego had a
Exactly.
hard time reconciling that. And
Hmm.
this is a beautiful conversation and doorway to have into how to use BDSM and kink play. You talked about your partner, who
Hmm.
you brought him into this, and he wasn't even in this. So
Yes.
take us there. How we can use this to heal and ascend. And I can already see it right now. I'm sorry to keep talking because I want you to talk, but
Okay.
I can see it right now how we can use BDSM and kink to ascend the matrix, because you're using something that they're using to create density to actually release
Exactly.
density.
Yes, exactly.
So take
Absolutely.
us to your partner and how that whole process of where he's at with it now and bringing him into that.
Absolutely. It's been actually absolutely gorgeous process because, I did use my sexual ability to manifest this man. I really
Uh-huh.
wanted, I wrote
Uh-huh.
down exactly what I wanted. Before I even had him, I became my own self-led submissive. I got into the role of it. I really put myself in that mindset of this is who I am. I dated myself. I gave myself
Mm,
things and the needs and the desires that I wanted.
yeah,
And and at the time not knowing he was doing the exact same thing. But yes, like I said at the
love it.
beginning, he had no desire to be anywhere a part of it. We almost didn't become a thing. It's actually quite funny because I knew what I wanted. I was like, I'm very clear. I can't, we call it vanilla. I can't be vanilla.
Me
You know,
neither.
that's, it's like, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. I want to be in a dynamic of a dominant submissive role.
Yeah.
And I need that dominant because I am a submissive.
And isn't his rising sign Scorpio?
Uh-huh.
FM8, or in the tropical false matrix zodiac, it's Scorpio.
Yes.
So
Yes, it
it's
is.
interesting that he had not come into that yet.
Well, actually, he just had a tainted experience, unfortunately, with it. So what happened was the more we got to know each other, the more he kind of was able to really, start asking questions and start really recognizing that I was somebody who was, knew what I wanted, knew who I was, and really embodied in that. And it made him question everything. And so he finally got to a place where he's like, can we just test the waters a little here?
Yeah.
And why don't you take me on and teach me these things? And we did a contract. We did a 3 month at a time. Um,
Ooh,
yes, we
all this
did. We
is
did.
so
I
sexy,
know.
juicy. I'm like, I'm taking notes over here.
That's right. Take them. But yes, we did. We did the 50 Shades of Grey, created a contract, but we
Love
did
it.
it with love and intention and really made it a really beautiful process that fit our needs, our desires. We were very clear in our communication. And so he did a lot of research. He got mentors, and it just beautifully developed into this
Wow,
amazing,
he was dedicated.
wonderful relationship. He was very
Very
dedicated.
scorpion of him.
Yes. But, it really helped him open his eyes to see a world that was possible. And for me, I truly love these types of dynamics because there is so much trust that is required, so much communication that is required in this. It's so much more elevated to me in my own personal experience
Mhm.
than what I would have experienced in a regular relationship or a what they call a vanilla relationship because there's just not that there. And that's where when I started getting into classes with you for astrology. This was at the beginning of he and I's relationship. And then we started doing cacao ceremonies. And
Mhm.
then plant medicine came into my life.
Yeah,
And when that came into my life, I went, wow, these two are really similar.
yeah,
They really require a lot of the same things as I have in my own dynamic.
yeah. Surrender.
And yes, exactly. You have to
Yeah,
surrender constantly over and over and over. The trust that you have to build in the relationship with the medicine is just the same.
yeah.
And so
Oh, I love that.
it was such a
I love that.
beautiful way to really do that. And it just really made me realize how much I wanted to bring this to my community.
We hardly ever talk about this. Okay. So
I know.
for those listening, they're probably like, they know each other. They spend a lot of time with each other. There's no way they haven't talked about all this. We really haven't. Okay. We
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 haven't had the
talked about
chance.
it in pockets and in different times.
Yes.
But my goodness, it's that really set a light bulb off for me because when I work with all the medicines, but when I work with Grandfather Wachuma, the cactus medicine,
Mm-hmm.
um, for those listening, which is also called San Pedro, because it's such a grounded, safe, masculine energy, he will usually sort of embody my future partner or the partner that's waiting for me, or he will. he's called grandfather, okay, but he likes to say, okay, well, right now I'm not your granddaddy. I'm just your daddy. And he likes to be sexual with me, but it's not in a when I say inappropriate, like I mean it's all like he's waiting for me to make the decisions and I do, my energy is very dual. I feel very dual gender. I feel very like a switch, both dominant and submissive.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful relationship that the medicines have. And I never thought about it from that way, but there is this surrender you have to have. There's this safety. You're only going to
Yes.
go as deep as you feel safe to go. And you like I love all of our adjectives. Um, and you have this incredibly orgasmic experience when you
Yes.
are peaking in the
Yes.
medicine experience. There's something very, and
Exactly.
I will work with many different medicines and it will activate me sexually. I've had
Yes.
medicine journeys where I have gone to a mirror and touched my body and like desired myself, wanted to have sex with myself. And I mean
Hmm.
that in a, like I'm looking at me from out here because the medicine makes you see yourself differently. I had
Yeah.
experiences with medicine where back in the day, I was involved with a medicine group, which was not as high vibe as we practice medicine to be.
Yes.
But the practitioner was inappropriately touching me. I mean, it was touching on the neck and the chest and kissing on the neck during journey, and that is not allowed. It was
Yeah.
a co-facilitator, so it wasn't like it was the main person, but
Hmm.
it was the partner of the main person. I didn't know. I didn't know who he was. It was my first time there, so I didn't know he was his partner, and I didn't know he was co-facilitating. I just thought he was also in journey, and this was happening, and it didn't get any further than that, and it was technically inappropriate, but I remember it rewiring something for me in that one night. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw myself as attractive for the first time in my whole life. I have Chiron conjunct
Hmm.
the ascendant, so the wound has been to my appearance. And
Yeah.
so I don't care what you all say about my skin and my hair and my body and how, oh, you're so cute, Chrys. It bounced off of me. There was such a wall that it had to get through that it was just like when the medicine cleared all of that and I was able to see myself in that way, I then had medicine experiences after that that were very sexual in nature. And I remember, and this is as I was stepping into my being a practitioner myself, thinking like asking the medicine, is this me directing it here? Like, I'm sorry if I'm making it go here. And it's like, just surrender. We don't, it's okay that it gets sexual. Sex is
Yeah.
good. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I have beliefs in me that it's still bad or wrong. And
Hmm.
so to combine plant spirit medicines like cacao and
Yeah.
antilotus, which is blue
Yeah.
lotus, and psilocybin and wachuma, oh, that would be an incredible one for the kind of work you're
Yeah.
doing, with
Yes.
the dominance and submissive experience or BDSM, sounds like a perfect storm for healing, okay?
Yes.
But a
Yes.
massive, massive rewiring
Yeah.
that could happen.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
before we go any further, I also want to go back into you said that you sort of became a mentor for your partner and
Yes.
but you were the submissive.
Yes.
I want to go into dominance and submission
Hmm.
from your perspective as a spiritual practitioner and as a medicine facilitator and someone who sees it from a higher perspective. Because when people think of dominance and submission, why is the submissive one mentoring the dominant one? Okay, let's go into this because I know that back in the day, I had ill informed notions around what dominance and submission was because it was modeled to me in that way, not only by
Yeah.
society, but other partners and pornography. What
Yes.
I was informed on what that was supposed to look like. And when
Yes.
we've had discussions before, it's really caused some light bulbs to go off. So let's
Yes.
talk about it.
Absolutely. Because there is a very distorted view that a lot of people have about what dominant and submissive roles are. And a lot of times they think submissive means you're lower than and you have no control. You can't have any say, when truly the submissive has all the power.
Yeah.
You have all the power, but it's also a balanced power. It's a very balanced dynamic that you have. And the way I view it as is I'm an equal. I'm an equal to him just as much as he is to I am. The only difference is I choose to submit and surrender control over, because he has earned the right by giving me trust consistently over time to have that submission. But it goes both ways, because for me, it I have to give that same amount to him as well. So when you're dealing with going into dynamics like this, you don't want to just, like I did in the beginning, give your submission over so easily. They have to earn it. But
Oh, yeah.
the submissive has to earn his dominance just as much. So we learn to respect each other and really cultivate that through consistency, through ritual, through just really learning how it works. So therefore, that's why there is this ability to be. I'm not the one in control, but I'm teaching him. I'm giving him all the things that over time that I had learned through other relationships, through mentors, just through my own knowing. Um, and then obviously he eventually took the reins, and I was able to trust him enough to let go of that control and give it to him. And that was, through our own ways of really being able to just build that over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Because there, with BDSM and in the kink environment and this world, there's just so many ideas out there. Even people who are ascending, they're spiritual teachers, they're really embodied on a soul level. They just don't go here, and a lot
Yeah.
of them just don't have this experience. But I find that most of the light workers and starseeds that I've worked with in sessions and retreats and that sort of thing, they have a lot of repressed sexual energy. They are
Yes.
very sexual. They've been very sexual
Yeah.
since they were a child. I
Mm-hmm.
know, excuse me, I've had clients in Journey who have been working through their sexual trauma, and
Yes.
they sort of had to deal with the idea that they were abused and that they needed to face it, but also that there were aspects of it that they liked. And I mean, there's just so much in that. So it gets
Yeah.
real icky to them. It gets
Yeah.
like it's just so deeply ingrained and so triggering that people just don't want to go here. And I feel like, now there's a part of me that wants to go give somebody permission to tie me up and maybe work with some cacao or microdose or with some plant medicine so that whatever happens during that healing experience of giving the power away or surrendering, which has been a huge part of my journey. The medicines like ayahuasca and bufo and psilocybin, and wachuma, but the ones that really make you surrender, or you have
Yes.
to surrender to what's happening, or
Yes.
the DMT experience. There's those were the medicines that were the scariest to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've often not been able to step into my submissive role because I don't feel safe and held to the level. I feel like I keep seeing Elizabeth the First, but it's like Elizabeth this I'm the queen or the king. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
queen, and you will respect that, but also I'm going to sort of step into the role of being your servant for the moment and it's my choice. It's a
Exactly.
sovereign choice.
Yeah.
Wow, it's like
Oh, I love that. Yes.
look at this experience that we can have that could be used and is being used in a very dualistic and dark way, and how we can actually use it in a way that embodies more light and more love and brings us back into co-creation and unity as well,
Yes.
where there is a balance
Yes.
truly. It's really beautiful. Um,
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you want to share with us, Christa, before we bring this conversation to a close? Any
Mm,
messages that you feel the audience needs to know about this?
I just think that it's really important to really explore pleasure on all levels, to not, um, even when there's resistance, when there's situations where there's trauma and things like that, pleasure, even if it's not sexual, can be found in many ways and many avenues. And really look into seeing pleasure as something that is juicy and that is fun, that is good. Because for me, I've learned to cultivate pain into pleasure and to really cultivate that and allow those juices to flow. It's helped me in my creativity so, so much. So I just highly encourage you to just really, try, experiment, have fun, enjoy it.
Yeah, that's what this is really all about is
Yes.
I'm like, everyone get the spiritual stick, get the selenite wand out of your ass, and let's have some really open-hearted conversations, some real conversations, but also let's have some fun. Like tonight, after our Ascended CEO call that we're having later, I'm going to go to a five rhythms class that they're having because I've got to, you know,
Yes.
I am been
Got to get movement in.
I have now made my way out of my 10th house perfection gear and I'm in my 11th house year and I'm ready to go find some community, get more into my
Yes.
body. And five rhythms is
Yes.
a very sensual,
Yes, it
embodied
is.
experience. And I didn't even realize we were going to be talking about all this necessarily. You know how spirit works. So,
I know.
Krista, tell us where we can find you and what you offer.
Yes, absolutely. You can find me on all the social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the things. Sorry, you can hear my dog barking. She has things to say too, but as the energetic creatrix on all the things. And you can also find me on, your beautiful website, the Medicine Alchemist as well.com. And what I do is I do creative energy audits. I work with energy. I do energetic alchemy sessions. I have also, as you mentioned, Rebel Reiki. So you can learn how to do Reiki and you can find them on my website. I am in a transition. So right now the website is thelilithrosemystic.com, soon to be changing. So, but right now those are the places, those are the things.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being here, Krista, and being vulnerable and sharing all of your witch wounds and your power and your codes with us and with the
Thank you.
audience, and for having such a um, very Aquarian, rebellious, controversial conversation with me. These are some of the juiciest and some of my favorite conversations to have. I know I love my little Star Trek
It just makes so much
deck
difference.
here that I have with all my little buttons. So, thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of Ascend the Matrix podcast. We hope that this has opened up something for you and that there's a sense of play that can come in around sexuality and releasing of shame around the fantasies or the um, energies that are coming up for you in your sacral and in your creative process. If you want to work with Krista, you can go to thelilithrosemystic.com. You can also go to medicinealchemist.com where you'll find Krista and myself. We offer microdosing packages that are called Rewired, which are 2, 4, or 6 month healing integration packages, which work with our microdosing blends called Microdose. And so Krista is an amazing practitioner to work with microdosing in if you're wanting to get more into your body and tap into your psychic abilities and really heal a lot of shame and oppression to your divine feminine nature. And both of us are featured there. You can also find me on ascended-astrology.com where we offer a myriad of matrix glitching ascension related astrology services like courses and sessions and packages. And of course, you can go to chrisking.com if you are a light worker, starseed mystic, or a conscious business owner and you're ready to take your business to the next level and you're ready to, go from 9 to 5 to New Earth leader. I love helping people like Christa and in my community, in the Ascended Collective, which is the community that we run and are of service to. I love helping the people who are on the ascension path tap out of the matrix by not only activating their gifts and understanding their soul mission, but then creating a fabulous, beautiful, professional brand and business around that as well. So thank you, Christa, for believing in me and allowing me to witness your process for all these years and for sharing this with the world. And thank you all for having this amazing, juicy, deep, just had to do it one more time, conversation with us. And we'll see you all next time on Ascend the Matrix.